Picture yourself navigating the dark waters of the ancient Mediterranean. Suddenly, your experienced sailor turns pale and points toward the horizon. Before you lies an impossible choice. On one side, razor-sharp rocks guarded by a six-headed monster hungry for human flesh. On the other, a massive whirlpool capable of swallowing your entire ship in seconds. Welcome to the world between Scylla and Charybdis, the expression we still use today to describe an impossible dilemma. But wait, because what you're about to discover in this video will completely change your view of these legends. Modern science has revealed that behind these mythical monsters lies a fascinating geological reality that explains why ancient sailors created these terrifying stories. Stick around until the end, because I'm going to reveal how these imaginary creatures still help us understand extraordinary natural phenomena today. Let's start by diving into the dark universe of Greek mythology. Scylla and Charybdis were considered maritime dangers located close enough to each other to represent an inevitable threat to passing ships. With Scylla rationalized as a rocky reef on the Calabrian side of the strait, and Charybdis as a whirlpool off Sicily. These two monsters jealously guarded the Strait of Messina, that narrow strip of water separating Sicily from mainland Italy. Scylla, whose name literally means she who rends, was described as an absolutely terrifying creature. Homer describes her as a creature with 12 dangling feet, 6 long necks, and 6 ravenous heads, each armed with 3 rows of teeth as sharp as razors. She lived in a cave situated high up on the rocks, and her serpentine neck allowed her to reach ships that passed too close. Imagine the scene. You're sailing peacefully, and suddenly, 6 monstrous heads emerge from the rocks to seize your companions one by one. This was every sailor's nightmare who dared venture into these waters. But Scylla's story wasn't always that of a monster. In the oldest tales, she was a beautiful sea nymph, daughter of the sea god Phorcys and Ceto. Her transformation into a monster varies depending on the version, but the most popular tells that she fell victim to Circe's jealousy, the formidable sorceress. Circe was in love with the sea god Glaucus, but he only had eyes for the beautiful Scylla. Mad with rage, Circe poisoned the spring where Scylla used to bathe, transforming the lower part of her body into a writhing mass of dog heads or serpents depending on the version. This tragic transformation explains why Scylla became so aggressive toward sailors. She had become the symbol of beauty corrupted by jealousy and revenge. On the other side of the strait was Charybdis, a monster of a completely different kind but equally terrifying. She was probably the demon of the tides, with her sucking in and expelling of waters 3 times a day mentioned by Homer, imagined as the cause of the 3 high and low tides of the day. Unlike Scylla, who attacked from the heights, Charybdis operated from the abyssal depths. She was described as a gigantic whirlpool, a gaping maw in the ocean that sucked in and spat out enormous quantities of water with terrifying regularity. Charybdis's origin is just as fascinating as Scylla's. According to mythology, she was originally a nymph, daughter of Poseidon and Gaia. Her transformation into a monster results from a conflict with Zeus himself. Charybdis had helped her father Poseidon in his territorial dispute with Zeus, stealing Heracles' cattle to extend her father's marine kingdom. Zeus, furious at this betrayal, struck her with his lightning bolt and hurled her into the sea, where she became this monstrous whirlpool, condemned for eternity to suck in and spit out marine waters. If you're enjoying this journey through mythology, and want to discover other fascinating secrets from antiquity, don't hesitate to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of our future explorations. Now, let's get back to our sea monsters. The terror these creatures inspired was such that they became protagonists in some of the most famous tales of ancient literature. In Homer's Odyssey, Odysseus must navigate between these 2 perils during his long journey home to Ithaca. Circe herself had warned him of the danger. He had to choose between losing a few men to Scylla or risking seeing his entire crew engulfed by Charybdis. Odysseus, in his pragmatic wisdom, chose to hug Scylla's rocks, sacrificing 6 of his companions to save the rest of the crew. This heart-wrenching decision perfectly illustrates the expression between Scylla and Charybdis, which still today describes being confronted with a choice between 2 evils. Jason and the Argonauts also had to face these monsters during their quest for the Golden Fleece. Fortunately for them, they benefited from the divine help of Hera and Thetis, who guided the Argo through the strait without loss. This divine intervention underscores the supernatural aspect of these dangers. Only the most exceptional heroes or those enjoying the protection of the gods could hope to cross unscathed. But here's where the story gets really exciting. These legends didn't come out of nowhere. These monsters were poetic representations of real perils that ancient sailors faced in the Strait of Messina. Modern science has allowed us to understand the natural phenomena that inspired these mythical tales, and it's absolutely fascinating. The Strait of Messina is unique in its morphology, narrow, deep, and subject to tidal currents that change direction several times a day. Here, the waters of the Ionian Sea and the Tyrrhenian Sea meet, generating turbulent movements, whirlpools, and sudden changes in sea level. For ancient peoples without scientific instruments, these phenomena were inexplicable, and myth became the means of giving a face and meaning to the dangers of the sea. The mythological Scylla corresponds to a very real rocky outcrop located near the town of Scylla in Calabria. The rock in the town of Scylla, Calabria, to the north of the strait, and a natural whirlpool in the northern part of the strait have been associated with the Greek legend of Scylla and Charybdis. This rock, emerging menacingly from the waters, created dangerous currents and unpredictable eddies. Ships that approached too close risked running aground on its sharp flanks or being caught in the turbulent currents surrounding it. Ancient sailors, seeing their companions disappear one by one in these treacherous waters, naturally imagined a multi-headed monster devouring them. As for Charybdis, she represents the very real whirlpools that form in the strait. Her cycle of sucking in and regurgitating water is probably how the ancient Greeks explained the powerful tidal currents in the Strait of Messina, known for its whirlpools locally called gyrophily. These whirlpools, though less dramatic than the mythological description, can indeed be dangerous for small vessels. They're caused by the meeting of marine currents from the Ionian Sea and the Tyrrhenian Sea, creating zones of turbulence where the water literally seems to suck in everything that approaches. The phenomenon is even more complex than that. The strait's currents present, in fact, considerable difficulties. The Strait of Messina is one of the narrowest passages in the Mediterranean, with only 3 kilometers width at its narrowest point. This particular geographical configuration creates a funnel effect that accelerates currents and generates complex hydrodynamic phenomena. Atlantic tides, which penetrate the Mediterranean through the Strait of Gibraltar, create ebbs and flows that, combined with the strait's particular underwater topography, generate these dreaded whirlpools. Recent research has even revealed fascinating geological aspects of this region. Faults related to ancient mythology help plans for the world's longest suspension bridge. Scientists from the University of Oregon discovered that the region's seismic activity, due to the meeting of the African and Eurasian tectonic plates, directly influences marine currents and whirlpool formation. This geological instability explains why the Strait of Messina has always been perceived as a mysterious and dangerous place. But there's something even more interesting. Under certain circumstances, the Fata Morgana mirage can be observed when looking at Sicily from Calabria. This exceptional optical phenomenon, caused by light refraction in layers of air at different temperatures above the sea, creates spectacular visual illusions. Ancient sailors could see phantom islands, floating castles, or gigantic creatures appear and disappear. Imagine the effect this must have had on men already terrified by the very real dangers of the strait. These supernatural visions could only reinforce their conviction that they were navigating in a world populated by monsters. The most remarkable aspect of these legends is their involuntary scientific accuracy. Ancient sailors crossing this strait faced a passage so treacherous that they felt like they were navigating between 2 living threats. The mythological descriptions correspond surprisingly well to modern scientific observations. Scylla, described as a fixed monster attacking from the heights, corresponds perfectly to a dangerous reef creating unpredictable currents. Charybdis, with her regular cycle of sucking and expelling, faithfully reflects the behavior of whirlpools caused by tides. This correspondence between myth and reality teaches us something fundamental about how humans understand the world around them. Faced with natural phenomena they couldn't explain scientifically, the ancient Greeks created narratives that, though imaginary, captured the very essence of these dangers. They transformed geology and hydrodynamics into understandable human narratives, creating stories that have survived millennia. The legacy of Scylla and Charybdis extends far beyond mythology. The expression, "between Scylla and Charybdis," has become universal to describe any situation where one must choose between two equally disastrous options. We find it in literature, politics, economics, and even in our daily conversations. Shakespeare used it, as have numerous contemporary authors. This permanence testifies to the evocative power of these mythological images. Even more fascinating, these legends continue to influence our scientific approach to the region. Engineers, working on the bridge project across the Strait of Messina, which would be the world's longest suspension bridge, must take into account the same natural forces that inspired ancient myths: currents, winds, seismic activity, and even Fata Morgana effects are part of the technical challenges to overcome. In a way, we continue to navigate between Scylla and Charybdis, but this time with scientific tools rather than mythological tales. The modern study of these phenomena also reveals unsuspected aspects of ancient navigation. Greek and Roman sailors had developed sophisticated techniques to cross the strait, taking advantage of tidal cycles and avoiding the most dangerous zones. They had remarkable empirical knowledge of these treacherous waters, transmitted from generation to generation through tales that mixed practical advice and mythological warnings. What makes these stories even more remarkable is their pedagogical dimension. By transforming natural dangers into memorable mythical creatures, the ancients created an effective warning system. Every Greek sailor knew to beware of Scylla and Charybdis, and these evocative names carried within them a whole sum of practical knowledge about navigation in the Strait of Messina. It was a primitive but terribly effective form of scientific knowledge transmission. Even today, local fishermen and navigators use terms that echo these ancient legends. The strait's whirlpools are locally called garofali, maintaining this centuries-old tradition of personifying natural forces. This cultural continuity shows how deeply these myths are rooted in the human experience of this particular region. In conclusion, the story of Scylla and Charybdis offers us much more than a simple, entertaining mythological tale. It brilliantly illustrates how humanity has always sought to understand and master its environment, transforming the incomprehensible into meaningful narratives. These sea monsters remind us that behind every legend often lies a profound truth about our natural world. The next time you hear someone say they're navigating between Scylla and Charybdis, you'll know they're referring to much more than a simple expression. They're evoking millennia of human experience, facing the forces of nature, the wisdom of ancient navigators, and the persistence of narratives that continue to teach us fundamental truths about our condition. These mythical creatures show us that science and legend are not opposed, but complementary, each helping us better understand our place in the universe. They also remind us that sometimes the greatest truths hide in the most extraordinary stories.